You're listening to Under the Shell Podcast, the best in America.
Welcome to Under the Shell, presented by Testudo Times. I'm Brennan Weissel.
Sam Jane.
Michael Howes. And this week we have on Maryland women's soccer senior captain Catherine Bootsie DeRosa. We have a great interview coming up with her right now.
Hi, thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Well, I guess I first want to get into something that, is on our minds right now. Obviously, you guys are playing much better this year than you have in the past. Last year, I think, one Big Ten win. This year, you guys have kind of set yourself up for a much better performance in league play. What do you think's been the biggest change this season that has led to much more competitive games? I know Ohio State, you guys took a loss recently, but is the biggest example. Last year you lost 7-0, and then this year I think it was 1-0. So clearly, or really a jump that you guys have taken.
Yeah, I think this year we have a lot of young players, but we have a lot of young players that are committed to the process and committed to what we're doing, and they see what we're trying to do within this program, and they're meeting us at that standard. And I think if we can continue to bring in these kinds of players, we'll continue to build success throughout the years. But I'm really excited with this group. And even though we haven't gotten our result in the Big Ten play, I think we've shown what we can do and how we can play. And so now all our focus is to build off of that and to beat Rutgers this week.
Coach Megan Ryan Emser, she comes in last year. This is year 2. But kind of what's been the biggest challenge of transitioning between coaches?
I think Meg focuses a lot on the little things, the little details, which I really appreciate. I think it makes us more intentional about what we're doing on a day-to-day basis to, prep our body, prep our minds. And I think it's been the most beneficial shift we could have had. And I think focusing on the little things allows you to be great at the big things. And although it's sometimes tedious to go back to the basics, I think it's extremely important.
Have you noticed Coach Nemser try to connect with the players when she came in?
Yeah, I mean, Meg cares so much about the individual, and although we're here for soccer, like, she's ready to prepare us for life beyond that, and whatever career path we choose, she's going to fully support that. So I think that's the biggest thing is her office is always open. She's accessible to us 24/7, and to be able to go to your coach and have that player to coach relationship is massive.
When you heard there was a new coach coming in and you knew it wasn't going to be the coach that recruited you to come to Maryland, did you ever think about transferring, ever think about leaving?
I did, and Meg was actually the reason that I stayed. Meg recruited me to Rutgers in high school. My path led me a different way, but I'm very thankful that Meg ended up at Maryland. Otherwise, I would have transferred.
How much was that? Like, what went into that process? Like, was it kind of just like, shit, I'm going to the transfer portal, and then she got hired, and did she have to re-recruit you almost?
It was a conversation kind of with my parents and kind of what do we do next? And I was just told to just be patient and to wait. And so I never entered the transfer portal. I was just patient and I waited. And the second that Meg was hired, I was so excited.
Yeah. In terms of, you've kind of taken this step as a leader when talking around with people. You became a team captain as a junior, I think. Am I correct?
Mm-hmm.
Despite not really having, as much of, playing caliber experience. How does that happen? What stories do you have of kind of like where you realized, okay, like, I'm taking this step as a leader? What have teammates told you about your leadership? Because sometimes team captains are just who's the best player, but it's clear that, they respect you in the locker room.
Yeah, I think growing up in my playing career, I was surrounded by the best leaders, from coaches to players. I was on a lot of player-run teams, and I was never afraid to step in and take a leadership role. And although I might not be the most talented one on the field, I like to stand on my work ethic and my values and what's important to me. And I think I bring this passion to the game and this hard work that I hope is a great example for those, looking up to me. And I take a very big responsibility in being a leader of this team. Every day I'm constantly thinking to myself, like, what is the best decision for the team? Every decision that I make, that the other captains make, it's always about the team, and it always will be.
In terms of, when Nemser got here, you obviously had familiarity with her, but some of your teammates might not have. And like through talking with players, definitely they mentioned the attention to detail is a big difference. Do you remember like a story or an anecdote where people kind of were like, oh, this is like, it's a new culture, new style, where not in a bad way, but just like a surprising shift? Like, what are some of the stories you have from your people's initial impressions?
Yeah, I think we had a few very talented players, but maybe they let the details kind of slip. And regardless of that talent, Meg did not hold back. Meg held everybody to that same standard, which I think is big, because when you have a lot of talent, sometimes you can let them get away with little things, but Meg doesn't do that. And I think for her to hold those very talented players to that standard really set the tone for the program.
You mentioned kind of like the team-oriented stuff and being very focused on, knowing what the team has to do. Maybe thinking ahead, you may not necessarily be here, but what do you think going forward this team needs to do in maybe the next 3 or 4 years to become very competitive in the Big Ten? What steps do you think the team needs to take?
Yeah, well, I think that the spring is huge for development. So I think having all those that huge freshman class experience a spring with Meg will be enough in and of itself. And obviously you have Meg bringing in another very good recruiting class and probably a few transfers as well. So, I'm not concerned with the future. And I think the more time that Meg has with these people, with these individuals, the better the team will be.
And then for you, do you have any plans post this season? Have you thought about coming back for a 5th year maybe, or do you have any career aspirations?
Yeah, I definitely have career aspirations, but playing that 5th year is always in the back of the mind. And if the opportunity presents itself, I'm more than happy to take it.
What are kind of the factors that you think about? I'm sure you haven't really thought about it too much because we're still in the season, but when it comes time, what will those factors be that you kind of help decide you make that choice?
Yeah, I've been thinking about it a lot in the past few weeks, and I really feel like I'm just going to get a gut instinct. I personally don't think my soccer career is done, and I think whenever the end of the season is, I'll have that gut feeling.
In terms of, Brennan asked about the future, I want to ask a little bit about the past. Why do you think Maryland has struggled so much in the Big Ten? Is it just because of the conference's strength? What are some of the reasons as a player you've seen that kind of has limited this program's success in the conference?
Yeah, so I'm going to speak just on Meg, because I don't think my first 2 years was an accurate representation of what Maryland women's soccer could have been. And so last year we had 3 wins in the Big Ten, and we're just shy of the Big Ten tournament. This year, although we haven't won a game in the Big Ten, there's still 15 points for us to win and to get into that Big Ten tournament. So, I think the biggest difference is last year, the style of play, us keeping the ball, wasn't very present, although we got those gritty results. This year, we're actually playing good, talented soccer, playing together. And although the results haven't fallen, we have a very intentional game plan going into this week. And I really think the results will come. I just think we need to focus on the little things right now. I don't think it has anything to do with our opponents. I think we've proven that we can hang with opponents. Ohio State was an extremely unlucky game for us, giving up a goal in that last minute. But if you look at us stacked up against them, I think we were the better team. And I think I could say that for other games that we've played as well. We've just given up silly goals. So for us, we need to focus on the little things right now.
And I do think I do think you've seen a leap, but just from the outsider's perspective, it is sometimes a little hard to be like, okay, they've taken this big leap when then you guys go to Michigan and it's a 5-0 loss in East Lansing and then a 4-0 loss in Ann Arbor. What is, as a senior, how do you try to tell guys to respond from that? Because from a fan's perspective, like just looking in, you're like, okay, well, here we go. Like we're in Big Ten play and Maryland's not really going to be able to compete as much. What are you trying to do to control the locker room for this kind of stretch run here?
Yeah, I mean, that's very fair. I think people on the outside definitely have an opinion, but I think for me personally, being on the inside, I see the day-to-day interactions, the day-to-day activities. I see what we're doing. I see the passion behind it. And so for me, there's no doubt. And I get that there may be doubt outside the room, but that's what we talk about within the team, right? Is that people outside this circle aren't going to believe in us. So the way we stick together and the way we stick together this week in particular is the biggest thing. And coming back from Michigan and 2 tough losses, we need to get our bodies back. And we already have a very strategic plan as to how we're going to do that, how we're going to hold each other accountable in doing that this week so that we can focus more on the soccer.
In terms of, as then listening to, Nemser talk, it's a lot of little detail stuff. The game plans recently have seemed to be, and tell me if I'm wrong, more of that controlling possession style of game. How much of it is, and then we see young players like Kennedy Bell and Ava Morales have kind of been those, like, Morales more spark off the bench. Kennedy's kind of moved around positions a little bit. Where do you see them do you see them improving to Big Ten caliber all league players as they kind of move through their careers? What do you see from those 2 young people? And has it been those little details that they've emphasized that have allowed them to have such strong starts?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I have nothing but positive things to say about Kennedy and Ava. I mean, Kennedy's a true freshman coming in and, leading us in that back line and having a huge presence. And wherever you put her on that field, she's going to do what the team needs. And same with Ava Morales. Wherever you need her in that attack, she's ready to do it. And I think, their presence on the field is needed. And for them to be so young and having such a strong presence just shows you what the future is going to be like.
Have there been any things that Nemser's instituted in terms of, actual gameplay strategy that, the team really hadn't thought about, or just things that kind of shocked the team in terms of the way you're going to approach the game?
Yeah, totally. I'm not going to disclose kind of any of that information, but I will say that, there's hours of film that lead up to every game, and individual film and tons of questions and walkthroughs. Like I said, there's a lot of behind the scenes work that, only us see. And I think we just need to continue to focus on those details of asking questions, of understanding rotations, of understanding the press. And I think that will lead to the success.
We've asked about like how Nemser's kind of changed the game plan a little bit, but have you seen the culture around the program kind of change around her too the past 2 years?
Yeah, I think from last year to this year, you can already see a big jump in fans and in support. And I think that will continue to grow. But I think people are excited for what she's doing. And I think it's shown from last year to this year how we're playing. And I think that excites a lot of people. We're playing good soccer. We just need to piece it together for 90 minutes. We need to piece it together from game to game. We can't take any more steps backwards.
What's the story behind the nickname Bootsie?
When I was little, I used to wear a little pair of black boots, and I just would never take them off. And a family friend called me Bootsie, and it's stuck ever since.
How did you, when you got here, did you have high school friends that came to Maryland? How did the nickname, or did you just be like, hey guys, just so you know, call me Bootsie anytime?
No. So in the soccer community, I was always Bootsie, in youth soccer. And so when I went through the recruiting process, majority of the coaches knew me as Bootsie. So, it's stuck in the soccer community, and I thought eventually it would kind of shift to Catherine, but it just hasn't really since.
I'll walk into a job application. So, Bootsie, how's everything been?
In the workplace, it's Catherine.
Well, Catherine, we do this with every guest, a little rapid fire segment. So I'm going to ask you kind of what are some of your top questions? And then I want you to just fire away with what you got. Okay.
Okay.
All right. What's one word you have to describe Megan Ryan Nemser?
Passionate.
What's the best opposing stadium that you've been in?
Penn State.
Player on the team who has the brightest future.
Kennedy Bell.
What's one thing about your career that you wish you could have done differently?
No regrets.
See, that's a soccer player answer right there. Strong. What's the best uniform combo that Maryland wears?
All black.
Other than soccer, what's the best like game day experience that on campus? Which one do you like the most?
That we do as a team.
Yeah.
Game day coffee walks.
How would you say this season's going to finish? How many Big Ten wins do you think?
Getting us into the Big Ten tournament.
Okay. Where's one place for soccer, either across the world or in the States, that you'd like to go see a game?
I want to see Messi play in Miami.
What's your like go-to move one-on-one with the defender? What are you going to?
Just a little cut from my right foot to my left foot.
How have you seen America shift in soccer? How has it been a bigger growth over the past years, or has it been kind of the same since you've been a little kid?
I think there's been huge growth. If you look at the NWSL, the teams continue to expand. So I hope to see that for the future too.
Who's the player that you watch the most, like film-wise or look up to?
Rose Lavelle and Christine Lilly.
Who's your favorite women's soccer team?
The U.S.
Okay.
The 99 team, specifically.
What in terms of this season, who's your funniest teammate?
Krista Baracchioni.
Okay. Which one's the most like serious, like day in, day out, like doesn't break a smile, just like keeps it locked in?
In a soccer aspect, Lauren Wrigley, but not off the field.
Okay. Where do you think this program can get to? Can it get to a Big Ten winning program?
This program can get to a national championship program.
Would you ever consider a coaching career?
Potentially.
Well, that's all I got for you. Thank you so much, Catherine, for hopping on. Appreciate you. Well, you heard about the women's soccer team, who has obviously had a tough season so far here recently, but Maryland football, their kind of first road bump hit this weekend, guys. Took an L to Ohio State on Saturday in the shoe. Was a close game in the first half, but boys, it did not go Maryland's way in the second half. The Terps talked about all preseason being Big Ten contenders, finally feeling like they've arrived at that type of stage and that type of standing, and they weren't there. Frankly, we saw it happen that they're not on Ohio State's level yet. So I'm asking you the question, guys, what was the biggest difference that you saw between the Buckeyes and the Terps on Saturday?
Honestly, it just comes down to the little mistakes. You look at Talia's 3 big mistakes of the game that play at the end of the first half. You look at the 2 interceptions. Those types of mistakes is what separates a Maryland from an Ohio State.
I think you also a little bit have to look at athleticism, right? I mean, Maryland played very well for the first 36 minutes of the game. And then after that, they played with no life. Looked gas, and Ohio State just went on a huge run, and Maryland couldn't respond. They just didn't have the athletes, didn't have the stamina to come back in that game.
I think one thing you can point to too is just like how both of you said it, and Brendan, you especially, when you're the underdog like that, you have such a thin margin for error, right? Like as soon as Talia threw that pick 6, it felt like the game was just like it was over. Even though Maryland was up at that point, you make that one mistake against a team of the caliber of Ohio State, and you can't win the game if you're Maryland. That's why we talked about all week last week. It had to be a perfect game for Maryland, and 2 picks and a flabbergasting decision by Tagovailoa at the end of the first half. Like you're not going to get it done. You can't win when you turn the ball over on 4th down, on 4th and 1 in their territory. You have to be able to capitalize on every Ohio State mistake, which they did in the first half. Ohio State did not play good. Like, let's just call a spade a spade. Like, yes, the Maryland defense played good, but they were not. McCord looked bad. The offensive line was not good. Like, Maryland had to open up the lead more than what they did, and they just didn't. And that's, I think, the reason they lost.
I couldn't agree more. I don't know if it's a coaching staff thing, but I feel like the Maryland players have this like thing drilled into their head that's like, we can beat Ohio State if we play a perfect game with no mistakes. And you can see as soon as one thing goes wrong, as soon as the interception happens, everybody starts to look a little bit more deflated and then slowly losing momentum. I mean, I thought the game was going to be over as soon as Maryland almost lost the punt. The punt was fumbled. I mean, most Maryland teams in the past, the game is over right there. So they battled past that, but still, those mistakes just almost hurt them more mentally than they actually do between the yards. I mean, it's tough.
I also think you got to look at the star power difference between the two teams. I feel like when you try to compare Maryland within these other Big Ten powerhouses like Michigan, Penn State, Maryland doesn't have the star players. Like you look at Ohio State, Marvin Harrison Jr. had 163 receiving yards Saturday. Maryland, I don't remember the last time Maryland had a player like that, other than maybe Stephon Diggs of recent history, where you look at it and say, this guy can wreck the game and control the pace of the game. Because towards the end of that game, towards the second half, it just looked like Harrison took over.
I think you guys have talked all the time about it, and as we kind of move out of football and look to next week against Illinois, is what Brendan said, the mental side of it. Now you've seen a loss in the shoe, and yes, it was closer in the first half, but what real positives can you take away from it if you're the team, if you're the coaching staff? But I think a lot of Maryland teams in the past that we've seen have failed to respond to that type of loss. Like last year we saw with Wisconsin, they would go and get blown out. And then what happens next week? They lose 38-0 against Penn State or whatever. And I think this week will be a big test. Illinois is not a very good team, but you're coming home before you head into the bye week. And then you get to play, I can't remember who, but before you take on Penn State. I think it's a fascinating game this weekend during homecoming when they take on the Illini. So I asked then again, pose the question to you guys, what do you need to see from the Terps this weekend to order to kind of feel like the sky isn't falling, if that makes sense?
You want to see the offense get back on track. You want to see Talia not make those same mistakes that he made Saturday. If you can see the offense put up over 27 points and see the defense put together another good outing, I actually thought the defense looked pretty good against Ohio State. You take away those two Talia interceptions. One was a pick six. Another one put Ohio State right in the red zone. Ohio State has 27 points in the fourth quarter. So I don't think the defense played that terrible.
Yeah. I mean, overall, I think the thing that I want to look at is the running game. The running game, it seemed like Maryland was going to it a lot in the Ohio State game, but it really wasn't what it was in the first other four games. So I think getting the running game back on track will be big against Illinois and then big against Northwestern. 2 games Maryland should win. And then, Ohio State loss is, not what Maryland wanted, but at the end of the day, no one expected them really to win that game. And so, if they can win the next 2 and go have Penn State at home and have another chance to shock the world, that's all they really can ask for.
They don't really think they can run the ball consistently against Ohio State. So then what do you do in those two situations? You run the ball. I didn't think Gaddis's play calling lived up to expectations. I would have liked to have seen a couple more trick plays, stuff out of the bag that could have thrown Ohio State off. You run a 4th and 1 out of the shotgun with Billy Edwards when everyone in the building knew that a quarterback draw was coming. He wasn't going to throw the ball. At least have him line him up under center. And I didn't think the play calling was good enough on offense. Talia made a couple really nice throws that kind of kept them in it. But when you're that type of game, you've got to be able to pull out some shots, and they didn't.
I mean, I agree with you, Sam, but that play call makes no sense. You put Billy Edwards in the game, everybody knows Maryland's going to run the ball. You might as well go into Wildcats and you have no idea what's going to happen. You put Billy Edwards back there, it couldn't be more obvious that it's a run. Maryland fans would probably much rather see Talia back there. So at least there's some sort of element. Okay, maybe this is a pass, even if you're going to end up running that play. I mean, you're playing Ohio State. You have really nothing to lose. You got to keep Talia in there. I couldn't agree more.
And not even just like, if fine, you want to put Billy Edwards in there because he's bigger, put him under center. Like, why do you have him going out of the shotgun? It's more yards he has to make up, and it gives the defense more time to recover. I hated the play call.
Mind-boggling.
As an objective football fan, I just was like, what are you doing? Like it was almost as bad as Miami refusing to kneel the ball and instead running it and losing with 18 seconds. I mean, and Josh Gaddis came from Miami, so I guess they just teach that over there. But yeah, obviously tough loss for Maryland. We move next week into Illinois, Brendan.
I will say the one thing about Illinois, the one thing about homecoming, I gave the family weekend stat. Maryland hasn't lost on homecoming since 2019, so
bodes well for the Terps, obviously, and they should get back to business and back to their winning ways next week. But the other side of the fall sports, on the men's side, the soccer team folks, they finally did. They finally got back to a win.
Yeah, Maryland men's soccer has finally got back in the win column. Played a strong game against Rutgers on last Tuesday night, lost 1-2. Maryland had a ton of chances, went down 2-0 early in that game. And then last 15 minutes of the game, Maryland had 4, 5, 6 incredible chances to bury a shot home to tie the game and just couldn't do it. I mean, Sasha in the post game, it just seemed deflated, talking about injuries, talking about just really at the end of the game, there was just unlucky for the Terps. And then they moved into Saturday, had another home game, had 3 home games at Ludwig in a row here. Beat Bowling Green 1-0, a game that they absolutely should have won, and they did. Took care of business. Capetti scored. He hasn't looked that strong this year, but was able to get a goal in his senior day and put Maryland over the edge. And then Tuesday night, just yesterday, Villanova, Maryland takes the win 6-4, and that's exactly what you want if you're Maryland fans. 6 goals. I mean,
Goals.
6 goals is, I think, if not the same amount of goals they had going into that game, ties it. I mean, a ton of offensive production. That's exactly what you're looking for.
Dynamic offense, right in the books. The men's soccer team, they're back. I mean, they basically have world beaters on the offensive side. 6 goals against the Wildcats. I mean, big time step up. I don't think they've scored that in the last, like you said, 10 games. So
yeah, combined. I mean, that's an incredible win for the team. And in terms of confidence, they're going to need it Sunday going to Michigan State. Michigan State at the time of this recording is the best team in the Big Ten. Maryland is the worst. So hoping to flip the tides there, carry some of their momentum. You know, I'd always play NHL on my Wii, and at the end they'd always say, you know, it's unfortunate you can't carry those goals into the next one, and might be the case for Maryland, as I do expect Maryland to lose that game to Michigan State.
On the Wii? What type of NHL are we looking at here, Brendan?
I don't know. I just remember they'd always say that classic line, and I think it applies here to the Maryland men's soccer team. Is they could carry in some of those goals, they might be looking good.
Did you ever do on the NHL where you could drive the Zamboni?
Of course, that's an elite thing they had, but
that was
they still got that.
That was the best game feature ever. But I agree completely. I mean, Maryland, you'd wish that they could have kind of extended out their goal scoring production as we move forward. But Mike, we know that this team has clearly struggled all year to score. Is this kind of a sign maybe of things changing, or do we think this is more opponent variant based?
It's a roster that's not the strongest that Sasha's had in recent years. I think you're going to look at this year a couple years from now and say this was maybe a retooling year for Sasha. Down the years, 3 years from now, maybe the freshmen on this team, they've used this adversity, kind of learn from it to get stronger as a group. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I think you got to look at this more as maybe just opponent-based. Villanova, Bowling Green, not great teams. So I'd like to see it against a Big Ten type opponent before we kind of start declaring their offenses back, as much as I'd like to joke. But an offense that's not back and was really never there was Megan Ryan Emser's team. We talked to Catherine DeRosa a while back, and she said she kind of expected the offense to get turned around. I hate to break it to Catherine, but it has not turned around. This team is still struggling mightily on the offensive side of the ball. They really just can't seem to get anything going. Frankly, it's just been kind of not fun to watch as a Terp fan. If for anybody out there, I mean, they've now been shut out in 6 straight games.
Haven't scored in a month. Is that good, Sam?
Brendan, that's what we call in the sports terminology as pathetic. Pathetic. This team obviously lost 1-0 in a tough match against Rutgers in College Park on October 7th, Saturday. They just couldn't get anything going. It wasn't even like they had great looking opportunities. I mean, a lot of shots, like with the men's soccer team, you just see it's maybe just a lack of luck, like you talked about, Brendan. I mean, missing shootouts at historically bad rates, balls going off the crossbar, goalies making incredible saves. The women's soccer team, it's like they're not even putting pressure on the opposing defense. Like there's no sort of goalies don't feel stressed, I would imagine. I mean, they get 1 or 2 good looks at the goal, and then it's like they're not capitalizing on those. So it's like a lack of chances at the bullet, and you're eventually like you're going to have this type of production.
Right, the goal numbers, the way Maryland's getting outscored is interesting, but a number I'd love to see for Big Ten play is how they're getting outshot. I mean, Rutgers game get outshot by 14 goals, and the same is true in games, in the other Big Ten, they're losing by multiple goals. I mean, only lost 1-0 to Rutgers, get outshot by 14, 15. I would love to know how much Maryland's getting outshot by in all those games. I mean, it's got to be a big margin.
I mean, definitely. It just is the lack of, even like I said, bites at the bullet. I mean, you can't put up they have to change their strategy, right, Brennan? I mean, you have to just start to try to put more pressure on the offense, because this type of ball control, let's play defense and try to grind out wins, it's not working. Yes, Megan Ryan Nemzer's in year 2, and there's a lot of, turnaround and all this, but you have good players. Like Ava Morales and Kennedy Bell are both good players. Like Kennedy Bell is already one of the best players in the Big Ten, and she's just a freshman. Use her more. Try to get her out in space more often. They've tried to push her up to the midline. Push her up to the forward position. At a certain point, the offense just isn't doing anything.
So Sam, they have 4 games to go: Nebraska, Iowa away, and then Wisconsin, Indiana at home. Do you see a win in the Big Ten? Do you see a tie in the Big Ten?
I see a tie. I think a 0-0 tie. Because their defense is good. I mean, I don't know if it's a production of the lack of offense, and that's why the defense has put up good numbers. But I do think I see some players Caroline Kustis has been good all year. Their goalkeepers have been good. Obviously, I think that you just kind of have to hope for tie, and then maybe you can push a goal across late if you're Maryland. But I'm going to say 0-3-1 is my record prediction, which would be another tough Big Ten conference play. Because all of us here, we're looking at Nemzer's team as okay, they've got some pieces. You got to start to establish maybe 3 wins in the Big Ten. That's a good start, and they're just not doing it. It's been disappointing to watch.
The funny thing is, they're only 1 win away from, or 1 tie away. I guess 1 win away from being 5. I guess not really close to 500. They're 3, 6, and 5, so they're pretty far away from that. But I mean, I agree with you. If they could get 1 win or 2, it'd be big for the program. But you start the first 6 games and you only get 1.
But it's 3, 6, and 5. But they're 0-5-1 conference. So
yeah, that's all that matters.
Yeah, and you're never gonna be that type of program that you want to be if you can't even beat teams in your conference. And that's what I think is the most disappointing. Yeah, 3 wins is great, but you got to beat Big Ten teams. I'm sorry, it doesn't. I think Nemzer's got a bright future, but eventually wins have to come.
One team that does have wins coming recently, though, is the field hockey team. They've rattled off 3 straight wins now. They're 2-0 since we've last recorded. They have wins over Michigan and American. But to be honest with you guys, just watching the team, I don't think that they're as explosive and as competitive as the team that they had last year that reached the Final Four.
Yeah, I agree, Mike. I watched the game, and it just doesn't feel the same. The energy, I know that's such sports writer hyperbole, but it doesn't look the same as it looked last year. Everything feels more stressed, I guess is the best way to put it. More, last year they would just blow teams out, run through them. You just, even when it was close, you felt like they were in control. This year, it just kind of is as good as they are, they're still a great team. You're just waiting for, man, we cannot score this goal. If you're Maryland, we got to start to get our offensive dynamic going. It's really just feels like Hope Rose is doing a lot of the heavy lifting.
Yeah, one example of that is the Michigan State game the past week. So last year they scored 7 goals against the Spartan. This past week they only scored 3. So they're averaging almost 1 goal less than they were last year. They're actually producing less shots per game as they did as well. So it's going to be interesting to see. They have 2 ranked matchups coming up this week. They got number 16 Michigan on Friday, and then number 9 Ohio State on Sunday. So these ranked matchups for them, they're 3-2 currently in ranked games. We'll see what they this upcoming week. It's going to be important for them to win these Big Ten games too, because right now they're currently in 4th place in the Big Ten, and if they want to be able to host an NCAA tournament game, or actually 2, because they hosted 2 last year, they're going to want to be able to be seated higher in the Big Ten and also have a good finish in the Big Ten tournament, which, depending on how they finish in the standings, that affects who they play in the tournament. And then if they play a tougher opponent, harder to win those games.
Yeah, Mahart's team, you really just got to put yourself in a good position for the tournament, because I don't think this year's team has the firepower to kind of go into a regional and really kind of run the table. So you got to put yourself in a spot where you like the matchups you're getting. But at least they're looking at a tournament appearance. Is Adam Hughes on the way? Questions are being asked in College Park, boys. Questions are being asked. Big win against Minnesota Golden Gophers. I was in Minnesota, and they care about volleyball down there. They pack it out, and they were stunned. My family and friends were when Maryland came. They're like, I didn't even know Maryland had a volleyball team. So that was a big win for them. In the pavilion, Brendan, good win for Hughes' team. Probably the best in his tenure, I would say.
Yeah, that's a huge win. Just in terms of momentum for the program. I mean, you were in Minnesota, but the pavilion was absolutely rocking. I was there for a little bit. I mean, it was loud. The band was going crazy. All things went right for Maryland. And I predicted it. I said, I think Maryland's going to get that win over Minnesota. I had a feeling.
Good call.
But then
you said one. Did you say 1-1?
I said 1-1. I knew it. Yeah. And I said, if they win that first game, they're going to have to play the next day on back-to-back. Like
terrible scheduling.
It's just not that practical thing. They're going to have such a high of beating a ranked team and having to go play another very strong team in Indiana.
Classic letdown game. I mean, that's like you could have looked at the schedule a year in advance, and I would have been like, okay, they could win Minnesota, but if they do, there's no shot they're beating Indiana.
Yeah, and the Indiana game, they lost 3-0.
I mean, they got smoked.
It was ugly, but they were still riding the high of the Minnesota game. So 1-1, I think a solid weekend.
Hughes would take it. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And I think he'd rather have the Minnesota win and a loss than beating Indiana and losing to Minnesota for sure.
Another chance this weekend to make some statements. A game against Northwestern, which I think they can win on Friday night in Evanston. And then Sunday at 2 p.m., midday, a matinee, if you will. The best team in the country, the number one, Wisconsin Badgers. Maryland can win a set. I think that'd be a win.
What are the chances they win completely?
0.
I don't have some sort of percent predictor that they might have on a ESPN or something, but I would put Maryland's chances at 3.
I would say, you know how we talked about Maryland had to play a perfect game to beat Ohio State in football? Wisconsin would need to have every starter fall ill, their coach decide to resign the day before, and Maryland would have to bring in 17 new players from the portal, all Americans, for them to have a chance. I just don't think Wisconsin is so good. Like, you know how we talked about field hockey, not really, like last year they had a dominant Northwestern. Wisconsin is that in volleyball. They are so good. Like, I've watched them. They're incredible. Great squad. So obviously anything can happen, but I would be surprised. Very surprised.
Adam Hughes will have a parade waiting for him on Route 1 if that does happen.
Put it in the books.
It's happened before. I mean, Maryland beat Wisconsin in 2021, but I don't think this is the year.
Adam Hughes his seat would be ice cold if that were to happen. And that's the subject of the next game I have for us to wrap up our recap. I'm going to take you guys through all the coaches at Maryland, not all, but a few select ones. And I want you to tell me on a scale of 1 through 5, 5 being, we're talking on the kettle. Kettle is hot. Tea is boiling. Tea is screaming. 1 is, man, we are in Antarctica. It is cold, freezing. We're good. Put on the winter jacket real quick. I want you to tell me where you think these coaches rank, okay? Megan Ryan Nemser, where would she sit on the scale?
It's too early, so I'm going to have to say 3. I mean, it's only her second year, right? So it's, you're not going to push the panic button yet. She hasn't had her whole roster come in yet, but no wins in the Big Ten is ugly. It's ugly.
Mike?
I'll put her at a 4. No goals in the past month. That's not what you want.
You know what they say, Mike? If you don't score, you can't win.
This is true.
You can tie, though.
Yeah, you can tie.
It's true. Very true. And if Maryland's going to get a tie, it's going to be 0-0. So.
This is a very good point. Okay. Josh Gaddis.
That's got to be like a 2.
2?
I was going to say 2 as well.
Okay, so we think he's
first year. Like, it's hard to say.
Yeah, I'm not even necessarily about getting fired. Just like, is that seat getting a little like?
Are people chirping? Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I mean? All right, next coach. This one I think you could look at this in 2 different lights. Coach Sasha. Now, not just because I don't think they're firing him. He's too much of a legend, but almost in Brendan's favorite teams in terms of the Patriots. Do we kind of see one of these like slowly transitioning, phasing out of the Swarovski era?
I'm going to say 2.
Oh,
I don't think his seat is really that hot. I think they've had a lot of unlucky things happen in this year. Games they should have tied or should have won haven't gone their way. had some injuries early and just haven't found their footing yet. And they have games to go. I think maybe if they kind of look the same throughout the rest of the year, it's a little bit harder, but I mean, this guy's been here forever. So it's hard to say.
Number 2, you can't, one down year. I mean, you can't have him on that hot seat.
Okay, this is my hot take. Good one. My hot take is he's at a 3.5. And it's not because I think they're going to fire him. I just think that he's getting very old. I think the program hasn't, from what I've read, hasn't recruited amazingly well. I think it maybe is this type of thing where he's not going to want to go through a rebuilding phase, right? He's been around for national champions. He probably is not trying to go out and recruit. I mean, I don't know the guy. Maybe he just has an unlimited stamina and energy, but I think that he's done a bad job. And I understand this year is tough. It's more so just about his age, and I don't know how much he wants to be. You know what I mean?
To go back to the Belichick comparison, I think, one thing the Patriots have always kind of said is winning cures. And I think Sasho has, and the players kind of feel the same way. Very tough coach, works the players very hard, has them on a tough schedule, driving the mental into them that they want to win games. And it's the same thing with Belichick. It's when you're not winning, it's just, I don't think it's that fun to be there. And so if they can get back to winning, then it's not that big of a deal, but it's an interesting thing to think about how much time he has left.
Yeah. And then last but not least, our guy, the guy who this is where the idea came from, the volleyball coach, Adam Hughes. Now, this one, I think, is the opposite of Sasha. Still a young guy, has kind of been, this felt like a make or break year for him. Where do we think he's at?
1.
Wow.
1? Yeah, I mean,
1.
His program is trending in the right direction, and it would be silly to get rid of him.
Okay. What about you, Mike?
If they can't win some big time games next year, then I would say that it gets boosted to a 5. But right now, it's got to be a 3. He's still trying to build the program up.
A 5?
No. I said next year it would be a 5.
Okay.
Right now, it's a 3.
Right now, 3.
All right, I'll give you that.
I would say 3 or 4. That's kind of where I'm at. I don't think just because you beat Minnesota, you're in the clear. But a 1 is crazy. That's, you're saying, Brendan, by comparison, you're saying that Adam Hughes has a colder seat than Sasha.
I do. I mean, maybe that's year by year basis.
He is riding the Minnesota Gophers win all day long. But
if I may ask one, if I just may ask one, Mike, you've covered the track team a bit. Ballman, what do you think?
He's not going anywhere. He's an Olympian and he's been here 20 years. He's not leaving. Andrew Ballman is not leaving. He's a great coach. He's a great motivator, and the program loves him. The players love him. So I don't see any circumstance. One that I do see is if Hughes can't make the Big Ten tournament one of the next 2 to 5 years so far. I mean, that's kind of.
Yeah, you don't make it either of these 2 years, I think he's gone. That's my opinion. But we all the Terps the coaches are in a pretty solid spot, is kind of what I'm hearing from you guys.
What do you think about Mark Montgomery?
They've obviously had good weekends and good weeks. Pretty much every team, other than the women's soccer team, had a good week. But that was not the case for our picks. Holy yikes. Tough look for Brendan, Mike, and Sam, except I have to give him his flowers. The one win of the week. Now, to be fair, this was a pick that me and Mike universally.
Thank you.
We did praise this pick. Mike, tell us the standings.
All right. So currently Sam is ahead right now with 10 wins. I am right behind him at 9-9. So Sam is 10-8. And then Brendan down there at the bottom, last place, 7-10-1. Brendan, since you had the 1 win of last weekend, I'll let you get the first go at it.
This will be the only time I ever go first in this little segment. So thank you. I appreciate the flowers. I'll start it off with Colorado minus 11.5 against Stanford. I mean, did you see Sanders go against ASU and flex his watch? What is he thinking? It's electric, and Stanford cannot take any of it. Vanderbilt plus 32.5 against Georgia. It's a lot of points, but anytime 2 Power 5 teams have 30-plus points,
it's honestly just embarrassing if Vanderbilt loses by that much. So I think in terms of a pride pick,
This is
Vanderbilt. I'll go with that.
Kentucky. This was my thinking for
Yeah,
Kentucky.
fair.
And then they got absolutely ransacked.
And then I'll go Duke -3.5 against NC State. There we go. Another 1-2 weekend.
Mike, we'll go in reverse order. The champion will go last. So take it away.
Fair enough. Champion by 1 win, I may add. First pick, USC, the underdogs by 2.5 points at Notre Dame. I get it. Notre Dame would drop to 3 losses. I also get that they just lost the last week and that this is going to be at home. But I think USC is the better team. They also have the best player in all of college football. So being the underdog I don't agree with that. Second pick, Indiana, underdogs by 33.5 points at Michigan. Same theme as Brendan's pick. It's a pride pick there. Michigan 2-3-1 against the spread this year. They're a good team, but they don't really blow out opponents like that at the end. And then lastly, Maryland favored by 14 points, 2 touchdowns against Illinois. I don't think Illinois is that good at all. They're 0-6 against the spread and a 2-touchdown spread for Maryland in that offense. A bounce back game for them coming off of that loss in Columbus. I like that pick a lot.
I'm going to ride Mike's coattails with my first pick, but I'm going to take the Michigan-Indiana under. I think that Michigan's going to go up 25 or 28 and then just kind of ease off the gas pedal. It's kind of what they've done all year. I'm sticking with my unders for my next pick. I'm going to take Iowa and Wisconsin, the under 36.5. Did you guys know Iowa did not complete a single pass to a wide receiver last week and still managed to win? Not one pass to receive, not one.
I didn't know that, but am I surprised? No.
No, it is Iowa and Brian Ferentz. Brian Ferentz is seat at an all-time 5, by the way. He's at a 10. And then last but not least, I'm going to take Purdue plus 19.5. I was not impressed by Ohio State against Maryland. I thought Maryland didn't play very good, and they still kept it close. I don't think Purdue wins, but I think 19.5 at Purdue, that place is going to be bumping. So I'll take the Boilermakers plus 19.5. So put it in the books. 3-0 week incoming for me. But that was a great episode. A lot of fun. Great talking with Catherine DeRosa, especially, to kind of get her perspective on the struggles. So, good episode. Brendan, take us out.
Yeah, Sam, and what a better way to cap it off than with a terrific terrapin. For this week's, we will have to go back to a time when athletes played multiple sports. In the early and mid-1900s at Maryland, that often meant football and lacrosse. One of those stars was Charles Ellinger, this week's terrific terp. He felt that lacrosse was his true calling and made it a part of his life for many years. Ellinger was born in 1914 in Baltimore and graduated from Baltimore City College High School in 1933. Then he went to the University of Maryland, where he graduated in 1937. At UMD, he played on the NCAA lacrosse championship teams of 1935, 36, and 37, and for all 3 of those years, he was selected first-team All-American in attack. In 35 and 36, he was named a member of the United States national team in lacrosse. Following his Maryland days, he played 3 years of lacrosse for the Baltimore Athletic Club. Ellinger was then elected to the State of Maryland Athletic Hall of Fame in 1969. After college, he got a master's degree in business administration from Harvard, but still had a job in the lacrosse world. For 20 years, he was a chief lacrosse referee for the Maryland Lacrosse and Southern Lacrosse Officials Associations. He was also referee for football. Ellinger also served in the Navy in World War II. His squadron in the Pacific received presidential citation, 5 battle stars, and 5 area ribbons. Ellinger remains one of the greatest to play lacrosse at Maryland.
Well, that was another great one by Brendan. And yet again, another good episode by the Under the Shell boys. You can catch us on Twitter, Instagram at Under the Shell. Look us up on Testudo Times. Thank you again for listening. Enjoy homecoming for anybody out there who's coming back to College Park. You can catch us around. We'll be at the game. So come find the Under the Shell boys. You can get a flyer from Mike. Have a great rest of your evening and enjoy the fall weather.
Guess what? You've got Under the Shell podcast. Nobody does it better.